Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we are back to Valley. This main menu is quite nice, I would say, compared to a lot of the other generic menus we've seen. They've got a little bit of a background image, they've got a little bit of motion. It's not really changing or telling you anything. But then when you get to this continue screen, it becomes weird that it's like taking me back to Wendigo Lake, the first part. And now that the whole map kind of works in a U, upside down U shape, from Wendigo Lake, if you press down, you end up at Soma Reactor, which I guess is technically the highest point on the map. So you're wrapping around. If you press left, you end up at Camp Henday. If you press up, you go to Sosaurus Valley, and if you press right, you end up at Sosaurus Valley. So there's not like a great way to get back to Smoke Lake, which is where we were. We had just jumped through the crack in the ground behind the giant colossal titan, which we were just like way too late in this game for them to introduce the idea of a statue of a giant colossal titan. And now we're kind of in this ancient ruin. We're in a very weird position in that we found that there's plenty of other energy upgrades to be found. So I've either missed a ton of them, or we are not anywhere close to being done with the game. In a funny way, it does feel like we're not anywhere close to being done with the game, but it's rather odd that you could potentially spend 6+ hours in gameplay in what was maybe a tutorial section in the mind of the game developers, but was certainly long enough and big enough area that you could spend a significant amount of time. These are the Wendigo doors, and we're starting to run into and fight the Wendigos fairly often enough that the game actually does have gameplay now. So like there's a lot of room where you could have just done some major editing. It wouldn't have been hard to take out and remove the first part of the game and work our way around to more of a to the point that we're at now, but get to that point faster. We also have a door, by the looks of it, up here, and these wooden steps now sound very much like metal steps. So there's a door over there, there's a door over here, and then there's the acorn doors. This requires only 18 acorns, so we can definitely afford this, but almost certainly there's not a lot behind any of these. Once again, we look like we're just too low to the ground. That was a bad mistake on their part. I imagine we're going to find a lot of these energy upgrades in acorn doors. So the game is just actively trying to give us more of a upgrade path quicker. And then I just got stuck on the ground. Besides acorn doors and Wendigo trees that are used as keys to open up the Wendigo doors, I guess you would call those Wendigo keys, there's unlikely to be a ton of stuff here. But this level is by far way more open world-ish and way more like realistic as far as what you would want for a game like this, or what I would want for a game like this. So I don't know what the why the game hasn't been like this since the beginning. It really should have been like this since the beginning. This would have made a lot more sense. I feel like the whole game should have been one big open valley that you ran across many times, since this game is so focused on the idea of running anyways. And they've dropped the ball as far as the importance of the life seed at this point. We've collected it, and that was our main goal in this whole game. If I wasn't now forced to shut down Astra before it potentially takes all the life out of the planet, I would just take the life seed, or I wouldn't be surprised if the main character would just want to take the life seed and leave. It seems like there might be several doors in the pyramid that the medallion unlocks. That would kind of make some sense. Alright, well, you can suck the life out of those, but that would be a silly mistake to do. Am I supposed to run through a waterfall? Because there's been absolutely no point up until this point where you've been allowed to touch water at all. And I don't see a tree or any object that would argue with this. It feels like this dark section here is like mud or something. It seems like it's slowing me down even more. Yeah, it definitely feels like there should have been some kind of major tweaks on what your base speed was, because you start a little too slow for me. I'm gonna run through this and we'll see what happens. Okay. So you ran through a waterfall, and that got you out of that area, and there's some rabbits and some deer. The valley is at full life right now, so it's not really a lot of reasons to potentially give life to trees other than acorns, which by all means that's still probably fine idea. So there was just like a brief section there that looked good. Interesting, we're getting an effect. We haven't seen this effect before, where we are walking through grass and kicking up dead grass. Interesting. So that whole section that we were just in feels like somebody else made it. And I was thinking what we might run into is a scenario where there was, I think this was a two-person team. If one person was actually the person in charge of making the first game, the first part of the game, that might explain why it was the way it is, just very linear and boring. And we now have a possibility of the game actually being an actual video game. These are probably the remnants of giant colossi statues. There's something around here trying to attack me. And I got up here. But getting up here didn't do anything. Far too much of this. Yeah, there's a bad guy. And let's just ignore him. We're supposed to go somewhere in this general direction, which I imagine what we would want to do is kind of just run. We've got the music playing and I'm trying to set the environment, but
The pyramid built by the Saurians served as a ceremonial structure exalting the colossi. Along with the Titan tree and daemon, they intertwined to form a mythology. From what I gathered, the colossi were once humans who feasted upon the forbidden fruit, corrupting them into giant monstrosities, cannibalizing their fellow man and devouring all life within the valley. Is this a tale of caution? Are the Saurians warning us against abusing the power of the life seed?
maybe. I guess we finally found the pyramid. It's a rather unimpressive pyramid that I couldn't even have the camera focus on as I was running around looking for potential collectibles and fighting a Wendigo. So this would have been a kind of great place for them to not spawn Wendigos. This requires 30 medallions. And I guess we're relatively close to this. This is really where it boils down to. This game would have made so much better sense if this was in the open world and we saw this pyramid in just like an open world plains middle central area that interconnected the whole world, and it wasn't until we were near the end of the game that we would have had 30 medallions or even had a chance to have 30 medallions. This would have not been any more impressive as a pyramid. It does look like an appropriate American pyramid, so it is like historically accurate, but I don't know if historical accuracy is useful in a video game. And here we've got another giant face sculpture and another giant face sculpture. So I wonder if people actually did eat the life seeds before and get turned into monsters. That'd be a weird ending to this game if the main character did that. Message from Virginia King, who, remember, her story's, as far as we understand it, done. So these are just messages from before the point where she got caught trying to sabotage Astra. The sheer amount of effort the Saurians put into constructing this architectural marvel is astonishing. It's a bit hard to understand sometimes that they had clearly grasped forms of advanced mathematics to be able to construct such a structure. How long did it take them? How large of a population was sustained here? It would have had to be in the thousands. Nothing really in that. Wendigo mythology is utterly fascinating. Not only do they reflect famine and harsh winters, but also greed and gluttony. We already heard that. Sometimes even humans overcome with greed can be turned into Wendigo, doomed to feast upon the flesh of man for the rest of their lives, never feeling satisfied. Sometimes they are depicted as ever growing as they consume more and more flesh. Will I sleep tonight? Just a myth, Virginia, just a myth. So the Wendigos maybe grew into Colossus in reality. But what kind of boss fight could I even begin to believe this game could offer me from that idea? Like, if we were going to fight a giant Colossi that was at one point a Wendigo or a giant Wendigo. Takes a little bit slower to open this door, but it's basically the same animation as the Acorn doors. And this is, I think, kind of just a side quest thing. Fire lighting automatically. I bet there's a chemical way you could do that, actually. Yeah, probably be fairly easy. Note from a Pathfinder, I can't believe we were the first squad to collect enough medallions to get inside this place. The land sharks can eat it. To be fair, we owe a lot of this to those weird prototype upgrades we were ordered to test out. We should make this pyramid our new base camp. The magical fire in here spook me a little though. Yeah. Magical fire. Lighting when the doors open. I mean, you could do that. You could have the room. Well, I don't know how you'd do it actually, because if the room was just devoid of oxygen and then you open the door, you would have to have some very heavy gas in the room. Otherwise, that would immediately whoosh out and be replenished with oxygen. Otherwise, whoever tried to walk into the place would suffocate. So this is either going to be an energy upgrade or a leaf suit upgrade. This might very well be the last one, considering how it looks like there's really only enough room for like the feet to get an upgrade, and there's not any more room on the text in the lower right hand corner for anything else. The Viper Coil Damper nullifies its energy cost. Okay. Well, this certainly puts us in a weird position now, because that means there's potentially throughout this area just upgrades that reduce the energy cost of like the double jump, and now the swinging is free. This one requires 40 medallions. Oh man, well, 40, I only have 14. Wow, so there could be a lot more game here. They clearly just wanted you to see it. And I can definitely tell you that I have zero interest in running around this game and getting the rest of those medallions, unless I only was missing one or two. But even if I was only missing one or two, if they're not going to give me a radar. If I have to go find some online walkthrough and work my way around the entire game and run around the entire world, you can just count me out on that. While I have in the past been a very obsessive OCD style player, I've learned enough to not do that in games that are mediocre, at least, and I would still put this as a mediocre game. In an interesting way, this might very well be a great example of what a single A game should look like. It's not a complete low effort Unity store asset flip, although it does share a decent amount of similarities to Unity store asset flips. But it's not well written or particularly complicated or particularly introducing interesting new gameplay mechanics. The life sucking concept is really not too different from just shooting somebody. At its core, that's really all it is. Like when you shoot a zombie, when you shoot a person, you're potentially removing the life from them. Sometimes in games you can down people and bring them back up. These guys go invisible, which can be a problem, and they do have kind of a swing to them. These guys might also be a little bit regenerative in their health. So you do kind of still run into a problem of needing to take them out fairly quickly. Did I get all the acorns that they dropped? Yeah, we may just rush to the Astro facility and that may be the end of the game. I feel like... Wow, we just now made it to Smoke Lake? Interesting. I feel like we were gonna have a... So this is the Astro facility. It's killing everything. Just get the valley back up to its maximum. They want you to this area to look like what an area would look like if it completely dies. By the way, I looked at the achievements. There is a achievement for beating the game without letting the valley die completely, which is basically beating the game without getting a game over. Seems like that would be fairly doable. Is this water? Yeah. Unless we hit a point where it stops becoming doable because they throw a bunch of Wendigos at me. Well, how far do I want to gain momentum on this? The thing is, I don't need the free swing as much as I need this thing to have a bit more of like room to let me mistake and hit not actually directly be on the mark with the swinging abilities. I believe we saw in one of the loading screens there being a mention of some bombs, so I do kind of feel like we're gonna run into some kind of mine or bomb system, something that might feel a little bit like the Talos Principle's floating mines, where you can't get too close to them. This is not really the best place, I think, to try and take on all these Wendigos. So let's kind of run through this. Just double jump. Find a way to get inside the Astro facility is now our new challenge. Where is it? Where is it? They're putting us in slightly more dangerous positions to be taking on the Wendigos. I could see accidentally jumping the wrong way to avoid a shot and jumping right off the edge into the water. But this game still is incredibly easy, so like just little tweaks would have helped this game. That's just energy upgrades, and we'll do that. Then I guess we might as well. Interesting, I pushed the wrong button and still I picked it up. I pushed the X button instead of the Y button. Yep. So it seems like we're going to be doing some platforming with relatively fine, relatively large areas, so we should be able to make it. But the jumping is kind of floaty and kind of a pain. It's not the tightest jumping I've ever seen, but double jumping will get us there. The problem here is I kind of wish there was a standard video game fly around in a circle camera intro cutscene, because at its current perspective, not really getting a good look at what the Astra facility looks like. Instead, I'm just getting a look at kind of the same old. I guess it's safe to jump down there, and that's probably the checkpoint. I imagine they didn't intend for you to get up there. Yeah, it's just metal walls, metal brick mountain walls, vines. Same old stuff. And it's a little weird that there would be a camp here, and that these little daemons would be here. You would think that they would not camp so close to the Astra facility, considering how it sucks the life out of people. So I was right about there being one more upgrade. I was just wrong about there only being one more upgrade. The Lake Skipper allows Pathfinders to run across water for a limited duration. Your speed will increase as you run.
I have tasked the Valkyrie Pathfinder squad with testing out the Lake Skipper upgrade for the L.E.A.F suit. The lake near the Astra facility should prove ideal for the assessment. I expect a full report on my desk as soon as testing is complete.
Like skipping a rock across the water. Well, then that definitely changes how you would play a game like this. Question is, how much time do you have? Because I was just hearing ... as far as beeping. Was that beeping draining my energy? Can you run as long as you have energy? Or is the limited time more a indication that you can't just run across a giant lake into an area that obviously you wouldn't be able to succeed for? For instance, if I was just to try to run that way across the lake, would it really let me go that way, or would it hit an invisible wall? And once again, we're in one of these run sections. I feel like the developers of this game probably really enjoy running, whereas I would say a very large percentage of people do not enjoy running. Even people who exercise by running, I think there's a pretty high percentage of people that wouldn't enjoy that. Personally, I can say I definitely don't enjoy the concept of running. It's not seemingly draining much energy, if it is draining energy, so it seems like I probably could go pretty far. That almost opens the idea of, if you have enough energy upgrades, you might reach a lot of hidden secret areas. That's weird that there was an energy ball inside the wall there. There's a lot of things on the ground that I think they probably needed to reprogram their walking mechanic to just walk over those things automatically. That would be definitely something a more polished, higher tiered game would do, is have animations where a character just naturally walked over a little stump or a little rock or tree. If Well, I gained a lot of upward momentum there that I did not intend to have, and it did seem like that was indicating that I couldn't go much further than where I just went. But it would be very hard for this game to indicate to me that, oh no, you can't make this run, you need to actually do something different. Yeah, and it is weird that you're getting bumped upward and the Wendigos just disappeared completely. This game is definitely of one mind. Here we have like a giant hand statue. This guy's just stuck on the ground, apparently. Just another energy upgrade. Seems like all the little daemons might be stuck in the ground over here. These giant hand statues are interesting. I imagine you could take a 3D hand model, scale it up, and turn it into a statue and have a starting point from that idea, but I imagine there probably are just giant statues in general that are available in the Unity store, and that's probably what they did. It would certainly explain a lot if the reason that there are giant statues in this game is because they were just cheap assets that people could buy, the creators of the game could buy. And then you have these lines, these little Pac-Man dots telling you exactly which way to go. Then they wanted us to run here. This really is one of those scenarios, though, one of those games where you, much like Mirror's Edge, you could have one speedrunner that has played Mirror's Edge 1,000,000 times, with no real exaggeration there, and they would be able to do a 30-minute experience, like glitchless, no warpless run, and make the game look really, really good. But then the other 99.9% of people who would have played Mirror's Edge... Oh, wait. I almost jumped right into the water. And it doesn't take any energy at all to run on the water, does it? Yeah, the other 99.9% of players who played Mirror's Edge, though, are going to have a challenge, have a struggle. They might enjoy that challenge and struggle. That's not inherently a bad thing, but it's odd to not have your target market in your video game be the vast majority of people that will play the video game. It's kind of like a story or a painting for one person. Well, those can be done if you want to be artsy-fartsy about it. You then kind of abandon the idea of video games being a commercial product, and that does put a game like this in a weird position where you could say this is something that might satisfy speedrunners, and it might be a great game for speedrunners to buy, and it might satisfy artsy people or fans of the creators. But if you're just a general average gamer, it probably is a game that you would want to just skip, because it doesn't have that relatability that most games do. And I guess we stop at this point and we're back to the Wendigos attacking us. But even if the Wendigos did attack me, it's like, what are they really going to do to me? They'll hit me and take out some energy, and that's about it. And that was kind of it for the music, so isn't that the musical cue that I should look around and try and find collectibles? Or should I stay in the run mode and just continue to run? I have no idea if I'm running the right direction. Okay. So we just ran and Astra activated again, so we are getting closer. And since we'll take a moment to bring back the energy of the valley to the way it was. I wonder if perhaps me bringing the life seed to this closer location might be causing Astra to activate faster. I would guess probably not, because the idea was that it was pretty much activating on a set cycle and it was just getting energy before from the life seed and the Soma facility, which we've kind of forgotten about. And it's fairly obvious now you can't just run in a general direction. You only have maybe a second more than that. And even my double jump really didn't get me high enough there. And we've lost our markers telling us which way to go, but you should be able to follow the general compass that's telling you things. And see, I keep holding Mac because I just would never be able to trust this game to let me leap in the right direction and then figure out that, oh, this is the direction I'm supposed to go, so there's no problem. I can just run blindly. Over here we have a glowing thing. Kind of wish there was a zoom binocular ability. That would be fairly helpful for a game like this, since you are running forward. So I'm just gonna run this way and jump. A little weird, and apparently I thought I would have shattered the whole window. Like, a little weird that we only went through one window. I wonder what would have happened had I hit an edge of a window. Probably nothing. Probably would have just adjusted me. Venture further into the Astra facility and we can hear water underneath us, which is an odd sound effect that's too loud. We've got a ton of doors and things that I think are mostly just settings. And while the Astra facility is shaking, it doesn't seem like it's actually activating each time it shakes. Otherwise the valley would be very dead very quickly. This is just a giant room with nothing in it, it seems. Like so many other parts of this game. I wonder if we are going to find like a giant monster inside here, a giant Wendigo. And I guess we should continue to look for acorns and medallions. And we have our pick of going left or right. Although this time, we can now just run on the water and right through a loading section. In case of emergency, measures in place to contain any core meltdowns within Astra facility. Pumping stations will continuously divert water from the lake into Astra until the core cools. Cool to know. It is becoming a emergency flooding apparently is going to happen, which is going to be bad. This voice actor kind of feels like a girlfriend or someone. I mean, I guess I shouldn't just be sexist and assume that it's the girlfriend of one of the programmers. It may be one of the programmers was female, but my intention there was she doesn't sound like the standard video game voice actor voice, so.
Warning, environmental extraction occurring. Please shut down Astra immediately.
So, I don't know, maybe she was an aspiring voice actor, or maybe she's just not one of these standard ones. A lot of that could also just be where her voice files are recorded. She does not sound bad by any means. Perfectly fine for what she's saying. There probably should have been a lot more of her, because it doesn't now ask the question is why not have a lot of this text read by either Virginia or Frederick or the Astra voice instead, instead of having just text everywhere. Like, yeah, why is she not reading this? Today I was ordered to patrol the Astra facility. This is from Private Riley. McDavid was panicky about some sabotage attempt or something. Yeah, right, I thought. Anyhow, I fell asleep. So, yeah, people still not really taking it really as serious as they are. Should. Honestly, I kind of have to agree with Frederick and the sabotage. I can't really agree with the sabotage attempt. It's one thing to endanger Frederick's life, the acting commander, or the person in charge. So I would have been fine with them killing him or subduing him ideally, and just doing like a coup. But for them to try and sabotage the work of the apparently hundreds of people that work at this facility, and potentially sabotage the war effort of the United States, that's really extreme, which definitely does give more thought to the idea that Edwin, or Edward, whatever his name was actually a spy. How am I supposed to make this jump? Still having a hard time judging whether I can make jumps or not. So, I guess we'll just do it. We'll just do it and we'll just see what happens. Okay. This might be the first time we've had a Wendigo inside a facility. Or maybe the second time. Now that one disappeared and then only took one hit when he came back. So maybe they do maintain their damage for a little while. Which way are we going? Down? I mean, I guess down is the only way to go. Just constantly jumping down these areas. Really is a repeated theme, and it's done really badly because it's just like done over and over again. Whereas the fall in Portal 2, what are these guys doing down here? I'm not sure that these little daemons are affected by the ground at all. I wouldn't be surprised if there was thousands of them under the ground floating through the rock. They don't seem to be particularly affected by corporeal things. That is always a thought about ghosts, is that if a ghost was alive 100 years ago, then it would probably be underground by at least 10 feet of topsoil. if it was in the exact same position that it used to be. Or at least in some places that would be the case. I don't know. I probably should do more research about that. Does erosion and topsoil balance itself out so that the altitude of certain areas doesn't change over time? I hear this siren sound in the background, which I assume is in the game, because that would be really weird if it was happening outside my house. It's an annoying bad choice. You really shouldn't play siren sounds. And even if you were going to play it, you should play it once and probably mention it out loud. Oh, am I walking on water? Oh. Well, I got boned on that one. So, yeah, there's just water here. I was looking at like a green area where I could shoot and restore life. I didn't even see the water. This game has a problem with being too dark. 2, 3, 4, 5. Alright. Who's shooting at me? Tons of people are shooting at me. We are running into a problem situation here where the game is giving us more trouble than it's worth it. Ooh, ooh. And so now you can accidentally walk into water, but now the game has a ton of accidental places where you're going to start walking on water. Did we make it? That was a different experience because I needed to jump up to gain height, or I guess maybe they meant for me to swing up. And yeah, forget any ideas of getting any collectibles if there were any in that section. The game is very abrupt about these splits between the running sections and the collectible searching sections. There probably should be just smaller rooms in general that you get stuck in. Let's try to bring back some life to the valley since we died. Yeah, this feels like they intentionally put a bunch of dead plants in front of you so you could shoot them. And I imagine they've kind of planned it out so that whenever a new plant spawns in an area you haven't visited before, if there is some life missing from the valley, it's spawned as a dead variant instead of an alive variant. Or at least it has a higher chance of that happening. Man, this annoying siren. And the shaking. If production is not slowed down soon, there won't be much L.E.A.F energy left to draw from the valley. I think this places our own personnel in danger. Fisher is hell-bent on trumping Oppenheimer. I don't think this is a good idea. And that's from a researcher. So, yeah. It's still, like, really, really hard. What happened here? Question mark. What am I even supposed to be looking at? Is the game should take control of my view and point me towards what I'm supposed to be looking at half this time. Are we jumping to our death? It's just a ton of roots, but the roots don't indicate to me that they're dead or that they can get life. Then big chunks of Amrita energy. Which human bones where? What is this place? So boss fight? Human sacrificial chamber. Potentially the source of Amrita energy in the first place. Feeding ground. And being a video gamer, this doesn't really scare me, as it's more just like, where are you? Bring it. Let's do this. I see something red, but I don't know what's presenting it. Alright, we've got a giant, relatively bigger Wendigo. Actual gameplay here. I think there's actually waves of energy and patterns we're supposed to be avoiding. Interesting. But there definitely is a problem with them introducing something like this. And they still do seem to kind of fail. I'm about to run out of energy and I'm having a hard time. And so we just died. Alright. So when we die, we've got to make a mad dash to get more energy. But the double jumps also are taking energies for us. There's problems here. Definite problems with this idea because we don't know how much hits it takes. Apparently that was it. We'll just try to avoid the waves of energy balls. I would have thought that would have dropped more energy. And maybe some acorns. Find a way out of the cave. What the heck was that thing? It must be where they fed on everyone. Like, how does this story and this concept synergize, though, with the idea of the Mesopotamians believing that everyone's heart is a part of the sun, and apparently the valley health was just restored with that one thing, or it was automatically restored. Like, yeah, feeding people to a Wendigo does not really synergize with that idea that human sacrifices were desirable and something you would want. I'm gonna make it. There might be some other little secrets around this area, but I don't know. Let's just move forward. The problem is, if you introduce that as a boss, then the way that's introduced, you kind of have to assume that there will be more Wendigos like that with the wave-based attacks, and they will just become very commonplace if there's another 3 or 4 hours of gameplay. Either that, or they've just thrown a boss at you that can do things that you have no reason whatsoever to have expected them to be able to do, and no way that you would have ever been anywhere prepared to dodge as far as those attacks. Because there's nothing that does wave-based attacks. Perhaps if the little demons did little wave-based attacks at you every now and then.
It's only the beginning. Imagine a weapon of mass destruction without the structure Extrapolating the mechanics of the leaf suit's god hand to a larger scale, I have devised a weapon capable of stripping all life from cities, even entire nations when used with the life seed. The Thanatos cannon will be the optimal super weapon, rendering all others obsolete. These bombs we're all competing to produce will look paltry in comparison.
This must be the weapon Virginia planned on using, so maybe she did activate it, and maybe it did kill all the humans around the valley. Although it didn't clearly kill all life around the valley, unless life just found a way to refill the valley, which is possible. Like, you could theoretically suck all the life out of a valley, and then the grass would just grow back from the edges, and animals would just migrate back into the area once there's vegetation to feed the animals. And I can't inherently say I hate the idea of a bomb that just takes life and doesn't do structural damage. That would be slightly better than ruining ancient buildings in history, but only slightly. It's just like fractionally better. Ideally, you would come to a peaceful amends, but yeah. And it seems like these take life from everything, so killing animals when you're just trying to kill humans is still not ideal. What does this say? Note from Andrew Fisher. Is this a new character? Or is that the main guy that just talked? I'm having a hard time remembering their names because nobody's saying their names out loud. These would have been better if these were conversations that were being recorded as notes and people were just talking to each other, and somebody would like interrupt and just say, "Mr. Fisher, I've got these reports for you." More day-to-day boring type dialogue to make it feel more relatable and realistic. The Brahmastra will be the greatest bomb the world has ever seen. It should be able to gather enough Amrita energy to produce a 100 megaton bomb. Can you imagine every nation on Earth would tremble before this unprecedented weapon? I think it is very important to remember that while the nuclear bombs were dropped by the United States on Japan, and that caused a quick and decisive end to the United States, part of their involvement of the war, pretty much. That in the long run, that led to about a dozen other countries actively speeding up their efforts to create more atomic bombs. So far, nobody has been willing to drop any more atomic bombs. But nuclear proliferation was definitely a thing because of this scientific creation, and it did not in any way bring actual peace. It brought maybe a small few years of peace, but certainly we are still in a world where wars happen. It also is probably worth mentioning that the phrase weapon of mass destruction, not really used in the past. That's a newer phrase from like the Iraq War. Maybe in military term something like that has been used, but I doubt it. With Amrita fuel, we can manufacture weapons at a rate quicker than a single nation engaged in total war, not to mention the cheap cost to produce. Astra can pull from any life source deemed necessary to produce bombs of any caliber. That's from a researcher. So if they ever got through this, then the United States probably could have taken over the whole world, and then probably would have very quickly collapsed under its own weight of bureaucracy and huge structure. Let's see, from a researcher, the Thanatos cannon exceeds all efficiencies demonstrated by the bombs. Thanatos will induce the same level of casualties but retain all infrastructure. Thanatos should render large-scale explosives for warfare warfare nearly obsolete. This could be a weapon to end all weapons. There is a cool idea. We have not really run into any humans, so we don't know if this works this way. But the deers, when they die, they just their corpses just stay there, and you can put their energy back into it. So if, say, there was a embedded terrorist cell, or even an entire country, and you dropped the Thanatos cannon, used the Thanatos cannon, not dropping the bombs. The bombs are different than the Thanatos cannon, it seems. But if you use the Thanatos cannon, removed all the life from an area, and then had a entire battalion of L.E.A.F Pathfinders in L.E.A.F suits, just absorbing and putting energy back into all the women, the children, the non-combatants. I mean, that really would be a whole new way to do warfare. This is weird. It's like the cursor does seem like it just constantly glitches. So yeah, you could run into a place, you could potentially arrest all the military casualties, and then bring them back to life too. And you could have like actual justice courts. You could, depending on how long somebody can stay dead before you have to put life back into them, you could potentially have entire groups of people serve sentences as enemy combatants in a dead state, where you wouldn't have to watch over them or feed them or care for them. And then, say, 5-10 years of prison in a dead state later, you could put the life force back in them and they would be free to go. Although I guess there probably isn't much rehabilitation there, but let's face it, a ton of imprisonment, it has no interest in actual rehabilitation, or at least no real level of success in rehabilitation. Definitely would change the world, but it does all kind of boil down to this magical thought that life is just this energy that you can take and give. I've not seen any evidence for that to be the actual case. As far as I understand it and configure, life is a chemical process.
You knew about this the entire time, didn't you? How could you? They're living creatures.
You have no idea what's at stake here.
Embryos. The orbs you've been using are daemon eggs. What you're doing here is...
The daemons hatch from the orbs and become those creatures. Okay. I mean, what did you think it was? I mean, life as an egg or life as an Amrita orb? Like, that's a twist, certainly. We didn't see that coming. They doesn't really affect much. Because you already have a level of just disassociation from morals when you're working for the military anyway, so this doesn't really change my opinion much at all. Like, the game is still going to make me use these Amrita eggs. Who is laying the eggs, since they constantly respawn, is an interesting question. Yeah, but as I understand it, that life is a chemical process. It can seemingly be started from just being in the right conditions, from nothing, and it seemingly can be stopped in humans for a brief time before the humans start to have major brain damage, and then it can seemingly be started again. I imagine any creature with anything that represents a brain, it's very similar, whereas we almost certainly would never be able to recognize a single cell having any kind of thought patterns or brains, and I don't think they probably do. So what life is to a single cell organism is different from what life is to a virus versus what life is to a bacteria versus what life is to a human being. And it's not just some magical energy that's transferable. So yeah, highly unlikely we'd ever be able to do this. There's equivalents though. You could certainly like take the nutrients from a human's blood and give it to someone else, if take the organs from someone and give it to someone else and pass life on in that way. But it's a messy, long process. It's not just a simple push of a video game button. Note from researcher: vivisection of specimen 087 cost the lives of 2 researchers when the circulatory system was pumped with Amrita Combat X7 in an attempt to measure storage capacity. The resulting explosion has shown us that the mass of Amrita can draw energy from its surroundings. A mass of Amrita. Vivisection is the, I believe, live dissection of human beings, which, speaking of the Japanese and dropping the nuclear bombs on them, they did do that to the human American prisoners of war. They did quite a lot of things that people kind of forget about. Not that they deserve to have 2 civilian cities nuked instead of targeting military targets, which would be right under the Geneva Convention. Note from a researcher. I don't even know why they bothered putting note from a researcher if they're not going to name the researcher. Amrita appears to act like an element on the periodic table, yet its entire makeup is much more complex than that of a molecule. Its nucleus contains protons and neutrons in obscure lattice formation. As its nucleus rotates, certain protons and neutrons appear to reappear akin to a 4-dimensional tesseract. So that's a bunch of scientific hogwash. There's really no way even now to see the nucleus of an element and see whether it had kind of a lattice formation or not, which would kind of indicate that it was more of a crystal, but on a much smaller scale than a crystal. For all we know, all molecules have a lattice formation. Interesting. I cannot read this one. Well, we have a glowing thing, but nothing there. Some energy. And we're just gonna miss that note, I guess. Are there any more notes? I guess this is a daemon floating in there, but we can't put the energy through it. Then we've got some creepy lights. That looks like that's new. They could have probably used this style of lighting in several other places. Here we have an Amrita orb. Specimen 176 dissection has demonstrated evidence of an Amrita-based neuron system. That one's broken, and yet the glass is clearly broken, and yet it's still floating. Here we have some images. Seems like the daemons eventually grow up and become the Wendigos. Okay. But apparently the Wendigos are the only ones strong enough to actually attack you. The question is, where do the little Amrita swarms come from? Vivisection of specimen 027 resulted in the death minutes after the removal of the facial mask component. Yeah. At what point do the swarms show up? Do the daemons turn into the swarms that didn't turn into the Wendigos? I guess that might make some sense, since the swarms are aggressive too. This feels like this is information that's like nice to know, but kind of pointless. It really doesn't mean anything at all. And I have a question as to how they caught these guys and what fluid is holding them in there. I would think they could just fly through it if they were alive. Specimen 6 has been starved of raw M-Rydo energy for 54 days before eventually dying. So the M-Rydo energy is not the same as the eggs and the orbs, though. The M-Rydo energy is something that we've just not been able to see because it's been too small. So each little indicator is the marker of a large sum of M-Rydo energy. See, specimen 01 has undergone vivisection to explore M-Rydo extraction techniques. After extraction of 5 watts, the specimen ceased all vital signs. You can see in this one there is like a little baby daemon, which again, it's just kind of pointless to have called these daemons. That sounds just too much like demons. Should have just made a new name so they could have marketed that new name. Specimen 200 managed to generate 1 kilowatt before its heart gave out. Apparently it has a heart and a circulatory system. The specimen is the result of selective breeding and use of M-Rydo compound X7. Okay. What does any of that matter? I mean, none of the story has anything to do with what you're doing. Your goal is still exactly the same. Maybe we'll get up there at some point. You're still just trying to shut down this Astra facility, and then you're going to take the life seed, and then you're going to do whatever you were going to do with the life seed. Interesting. I don't know which way to go, and there's no cursor telling me where to go. But it would be fairly pathetic to get lost and confused when there's really only one place to go anyways. Oddly, this feels like they want you to run again.
We had to catch the saboteurs in the act. We allowed them access into the Astra facility during their night of attack. Admittedly, their plan was rather genius. Since Astra and Soma are linked, they intended to fire the Thanatos cannon connected to Astra's thermal storage at the Soma facility's energy reservoir to create a feedback loop of amplifying intensity until the system blows out. Not unlike a microphone to a speaker.
I can finish what Virginia started. Create a feedback loop between Astra and Soma using Thanatos. That doesn't sound smart. This is gonna kill me, probably, and everybody in the valley. Which I really don't have a reason to kill the daemons and the Wendigos. What I've been doing is putting energy into them. So, the Wendigos. So, in theory, I'm pacifying them and giving them back their babies, for lack of a better term. And they seemed to justifiably be upset. And it feels like the game could end at any moment because the Astra facility could just blow up or activate and suck all the life out of an area. Here we've got a energy reactor status indicator. Just lots of places where there could be collectibles. These little energy tanks making too much noise. And man, it's been about 40 minutes of just that siren. I feel like we're gonna just end up opening a giant door and seeing yet another reactor or a giant cannon, and that'll be it. I mean, I can't say I absolutely hate the idea of just wrapping up the game, but I kind of wish there was a little bit more.
We had temporarily removed the life seed information, thus creating a harmless feedback loop when they attempted to fire Thanatos. Without the life seed, their plan was doomed to fail from the beginning. I will not tolerate any more disruptions. We have lost too much ground to Manhattan. Operations will resume exponentially. If the orbs will not suffice, then we'll use the damn valley itself.
Yeah, so the plan failed. Like, already, because we have the seed on us in person. So if we, unless we wanted to step in front of the Thanatos cannon and shoot ourselves, and hope that that somehow worked, which it really wouldn't, because that wouldn't loop back into the Soma reactor. It's got nothing to do. I don't know why there's rocks falling downward. Is there any text or things? Apparently we're going to place the life seed in the Astro facility, and then we're going to get, I guess, in here and activate it. If anything, what this might do, and see, we can see it was removed from our inventory. Now everything is just moving upward, just as cool. But again, the camera should just take control away from me and have me look at something specific. Amplify feedback loop. Just like blowing out a speaker. Fire the Thanatos towards the Soma energy cannon. This is weird, to say the least. And I guess we can kind of see why, man, there's just a lot of God rays happening there. Why there was that really high peak area before with all of the smoky clouds. Because obviously, now from the looks of it, you can see there's, they needed a section like this. I guess that's the Soma facility over there. Is there anything else we can fire this at? And I really have to question why does the Thanatos cannon apparently do two different things? Like, why does it send life energy and take life energy? Why does it not just take life energy? And was this really going to be a game that... okay, so we can press the right trigger to fire the Thanatos and suck the life out of it, I guess? I feel like at some point we might end up back here and have to fire this at something else. There's no up, down here, it's just left, right. So we'll go around in a full circle just to see if there's anything that we possibly would want to shoot otherwise. Nope. Okay. So if we're sucking the life out of the Soma facility, then all the energy would be going into the life seed, maybe, and then maybe the life seed would bring back life to the valley or increase life in the valley. If we're shooting the life seed's amount of energy towards the Soma facility, what are we really accomplishing? Because there's no life seed there, it won't amplify the energy, it'll just get stored there. Or we would just be effectively draining the life seed. I don't think the story has thought this through. Let's just see what happens. This is something that probably would have been better as a cutscene. Yeah. It seems like it's sucking all the energy out. Which would make sense because that's the button that we used. And if we just blew up the Soma facility, we hope that there was nobody there. And nothing alive there other than maybe some animals.
Danger. Thermal core meltdown detected. Cooling protocol initiated. All personnel must vacate the premise immediately through emergency corridors.
Are we gonna get the life seed back? Or do we leave it? Escape the facility before total meltdown. Do we have a real timer here? Yeah, I don't think we can get the life seed back. It's somewhere in this rubble, I would guess. And I guess we've probably put an end to Astra killing people. Interesting, I died, but it didn't take any energy out. I guess the general idea here is there are still some places you can't run on water, which really ruined that idea. This place is flooding. While we try to load up here, we'll just ignore all these guys because clearly this is the experience they wanted you to have. Which way are we supposed to be going here? Oh, so you're just gonna fall into the water and die many times apparently. Okay, here's a wall. These really don't grow. They don't glow enough to make it obvious that that's the direction you're supposed to be going. I kind of have to make the assumption that the Wendigos are not particularly intelligent because they do seem to just attack me regardless. And their Fisher's office? Question mark. We have time.
Everyone. They're all getting killed by these things. These creatures. If anyone hears this, please understand. Please understand what we were doing here. The things we created. Must see our achievements. Our work will change the course of human history. Whoever holds this technology holds the world in their hands. Remember what I accomplished.
So it seems like Fisher got killed by the Wendigos, as everybody else did too. And yeah, this is just a low effort copy of the BioShock story. So yeah, let's keep going. There's nothing really happening there story-wise. Let's see, I caught a visual glimpse of the side of the wall there being metallic, and so I shifted to jump. I like this idea. They really failed to do anything with it though. And yeah, we're just gonna keep on running. They're hoping for a cinematic escape. Well, I didn't realize that you might be able to run along the edges, and you kind of can't. That would have been a cool improvement on their ability. though. What this chute leads to, I have no idea. Unless this was just disposal of bombs. So I had to manually turn around and look at that. And then I landed in the water and went black. So, why do I immediately drown every other point when I touch the water, but in the end of the game here, we actually can toss the leaf suit and survive? What are we floating on? There's a dead deer and a lot of dead trees. It'd be funny if we were floating on like a giant whale or something. But then they would have had to tease the idea of a giant whale. Or...
With the combined power of Thanatos and the Brahm Astroform, power to control the world will lie within the hands of a small few. Every nation on Earth will tremble.
Yeah, she doesn't even care about the story any more than I do. And yeah, I get the metaphor. I get the metaphor that people shouldn't consume and use the life seeds. I would say the Caesarians aren't particularly great at telling that story, but I guess they had to try and figure out how to tell a story without using a language that would have long since forgotten. Okay, so that's the game. And here we have some concept art. And I thought this was a two-person team, but looking at the list here, there's actually more than 2 people. Which, I guess some of that makes some sense. It looks like it's about a 10-person team. But this game still definitely feels like an unfinished product. Particularly the first half. If you'd been fighting Wendigos within the first hour, there'd been like 1 Emerita swarm, and then the Wendigos within the first 3 hours. Honestly, it needed to have been within the first 2 hours. That would have made a lot more sense. And a lot of the level design, like way over focus here on level design compared to having a better story or having more interactable creatures or people to talk to. There really needed to be some kind of human you could relate to here. You can't really relate to Frederick. You can't really relate to Virginia. You maybe relate to the Wendigos a little bit, but that's it. Yeah, those first 6 hours though, that was just crazy. Here's a whole bunch of different kinds of acorn doors that they were thinking about designing. That is a great example of where a director would need to step in and say, no, we're going to have one design for all the doors and not a whole bunch of them. And they did do that. But they needed to step in and say, no, we're going to have one big open valley area that is around the Astro facility. And then the Astro facility is going to be in the middle of that, surrounded by water. On one side of the valley that has this big lake in the middle, there will be the temple that should be a little bit more interesting. On another side, there will be off in the distance the Soma facility. On another side, there would be one camp. On another side would be another camp. And it would just be one big area. Which, it definitely is hard to program giant open world games, but that's what this should have been. And there still should have been more people to fight and more things to do. And they still, even at that, probably should have removed about half of the level design, because there definitely were a lot of places where you just had infinite run locations. just for cutscene purposes. That they were really obviously in love with the idea. What are we looking at now? I haven't been paying attention to the credits. Are these all Kickstarter backers? Because that would explain a lot here. This might be one of those games where it had a Kickstarter and thus it was already funded. Thus all they had to do is give some kind of a finished product to the Kickstarter backers. And it certainly would explain where a game like this wouldn't have a real need to try to be so good that it could get a sequel. I doubt you would ever make a sequel to this game at all. And if you think about comparing this game to like Journey, where you're wandering around the desert and you're jumping and doing some platforming and trying to collect pieces of your scarf, people would much prefer to play Journey than this, and they did. So yeah, if you were going to make a sequel to this, it almost would have to be in the valley again, and the valley would just have to be twice as big, and it would have to have twice as much life. They are biting off way more than they could chew with the idea of having rabbits and deer and trees, and in reality 90% of the time the only thing that you could put life back into or take life out of were vines and trees. Only in very rare cases did you have any animals walking around. The little baby daemon wendigos play no real part in the story other than to be these kind of cute creatures, which, okay, that's fine, but they should do something. They should like bump into you and knock you to the left or right, like maybe not even hurt you or take any energy out of you, just kind of bump into you, and then you just categorize that as playful, them being playful, and then you eventually realize that no, actually they're kind of aggressive. There's major portions of this game that are inside facilities when there didn't need to be. You could have taken out all the Soma facility content. That was by far the worst part of the game, and just had us running around different valley areas. Could have also, personally, in my opinion, gotten rid of some of the training grounds areas. Those were oddly difficult compared to the rest of the game, and either they needed to double down and have more training grounds and more places where you could swing around safely and not die, which, if I could play this game now and just absolutely not die at all, and I could walk on water and not sink, there'd be something interesting to that. But also, I would want this game to have ended in like 5 hours if it was going to then open up towards more of a, now you have a collectible mode, now you can just enjoy wandering around the valley, nothing will attack you, you can just play in peaceful mode. Yeah, that honestly would have been a great idea, if there was a difficulty setting, say, to be able to play this game in peaceful mode versus a easy and hard setting, which this game desperately needed a hard setting. I don't even usually like playing games on anything higher than normal, but in this case, having more enemies early in the game would have been a lot more useful, although it didn't really change much at the end when we were escaping, because you can just run past them, and that's pretty much it. So that there's almost an argument that the entire game should have just been pushing you towards the idea that you can't defeat these guys, they're immortal, you have to run from them, and they're fast. There needed to be races in this game. Just run from point A to point B. If you do, you get a checkpoint, or you get an upgrade, you get a reward of something. Here we go. Here it says, "We hope you enjoyed your adventure. You can continue your journey by seeking out all the secret hiddens throughout the valley. Thanks for playing, the team at Blue Isle Studios." So, under options, there's nothing here. Under continue, we can see this goes all the way to Astra Facility. So if I was to just go to Wendigo Lake, what we would need is for the compass, which really failed to do anything at all, find 6 medallions and 1 energy upgrades. Okay. We have just an invisible wall here. But we've got the life seed. And we are here. So is there possibly, as we're going to try and run through this fairly quickly, something on the compass that would appear to tell me where these upgrades are? Or are you just doomed to see it? And see, this is where we started with just like these little tarps that mean nothing. This whole section, this whole cave, you could easily just say, don't start there, start here. And you could have easily said, don't start here, actually start where it says Wendigo Lake. Or don't start here, start in the middle of the Soma facility when you collect the energy, the life seed. Yeah, there's all kinds of little areas around the edges that now you can reach with double jumps. Oh, do they mean anything? This tree is actually blocking my approach. And so I just sucked out all the life out of that big tree, which was kind of a special tree. Yeah, I'm just trying to see if the cursor would pop up anything, because if it isn't, then we're back to that situation where I really would need a walkthrough to try and get all these collectibles. I don't really see a reason why I would want that or want to waste my time with that. It's not like this game was good enough to justify or deserve this extra attention to be an OCD collectible player. Here's the star that started it all that completely confused me and made me think this was a Russian facility. They really needed to just say it out loud that this was a United States military facility. There's oddly no flags in this game, no mention of the United States at all, which is weird. Like, that is definitely weird. Let's see. And you can basically get anywhere you want. And I bet the game testers thought this was really cool. But I don't think this helps real players at all. And these doors never opened, which it would have totally made sense for these doors to open and be fast travel locations. Wendigo Lake is a fairly large area. Well, nearly died there. This is a fairly large area, so even if you're just trying to book it, you don't get like any real major upgrades in speed. I don't know if I actually opened all the acorn doors. I know there's an achievement for that, but I don't know if I got that achievement. Yeah, this I think was a Kickstarter game, and I think they wanted to get it out on time, and so they opted to not go any further with any of that. There's a lot of places here where, let's see, you do have like now this ability where you could use a shortcut, but I don't know if the shortcut really helps you any. The water just, I guess, saves you from potentially dying. You would think there would be, at least at this point, some indicator. Like, it's hard to even think about where these collectibles, these medallions would be in Wendigo Lake. And this is a cool idea, running with the deer. Yeah, I wish there was more of that in the game. And the music just awkwardly cut out, but that is also the first time we heard that music. So that is, I guess, something to potentially appreciate, is that the music is broken in this game if you turn it down to a level I would want it turned down to. And I think we're approaching the point where we just fell through the ground and we're in a whole different area. Yeah, here's where we would have started to see some of these collectibles. So if they were going to be anywhere, I would imagine they would be here. Okay, right in front of us. It's a medallion, and we didn't collect it, so that tells us there is no radar. We've learned what I wanted to know, which is to say that no, there isn't a way. I've often thought it might be cool to have a game where you get into kind of a Adventure of Zelda type dungeon, and then you could jump out the windows and jump back in the windows if you find those exits and entrances. There's been a few games where it's looked like you would have been able to do that, but I don't think there's actually been a game where you could do that. It inherently breaks the idea of the dungeons in the first place, because the dungeons are obviously there to limit your ability to escape an area and let them unload the open world outside and focus more of a more detailed inside world. Well, I would say you need to play this game with a walkthrough. There's nothing here. Like, let's see. Nothing here that would change anything or give you more of a help or a hint. See if we could hear the male voice for a second. Yeah. Really isn't like there was a lot of area Like, there's no metal wall here to climb up into some secret area or anything that you just absolutely would not have been able to do. And yeah, he just makes a different grunting sound. In all fairness, this may still be Wendigo Lake. Like, we may still very much be in Wendigo Lake. Let's see. Because it doesn't change until like Susurrus Valley. It does look like you probably would get an upgrade to the magnetic core. Although you don't really need an upgrade to the magnetic core because that's free anyways. That doesn't use any energy. And I don't know what an upgrade to the pushrod pistons would really do other than make you run faster, specifically when you're running on the rails. Remember the rails and running on that? That was a completely failed concept. There's tons of little Kickstarter-esque projects and experimental programming that they threw into this game instead of just focusing on making a more generic good game. And this is a problem with a lot of Kickstarter games, that they really are just experiments on someone else's time. Icarus Boost would probably just make you able to double jump without using energy, and Lake Skipper upgraded probably just gives you more time, if not infinite ability to run. And if you look in the top right, it says now collect 9 medallions and 8 energy upgrades, so there was really just a ton of stuff we missed there. That menu is a little weird also because it kind of darkens and grays out your selection, but it in a weird way makes it look like you might have the cursor on the other one. There's a lot of menus that have done that. Well, that's going to be it for the Valley series. Nothing wrong with it. If you got it for $2 and you knew what it was and you took my advice and just ran through the game as fast as possible, not trying to find any collectibles, not trying to find acorns, not trying to find medallions, you will get all of the little Metroidvania elements in the story. You will just have to, and you'll finish the story, and you'll be probably not very satisfied with the story, as it's just kind of an obvious ripoff inspired by Bioshock 1, doing everything way worse and telling you uninteresting stories. Apparently, the obvious spy was not an obvious spy. And apparently Virginia was right, but it doesn't really matter, does it? Like, at the end of the day, it seems like everybody either abandoned the facility or the Wendigos killed everybody. I guess the Wendigos killed everybody, and those were the blood stains on the ground. So the Wendigos killed everybody and maybe ate them all and cannibalized them all. I guess that's what happened to all the humans. And who knows what happened to the Caesarians. I wonder if that sacrificial pit that I jumped down actually ended up feeding towards the feeding grounds where we fought that boss. That final boss was a little premature because, well, it did do everything you would expect, where you have a final boss and then a escape to run. That's very cliched, but reasonable to expect in a video game. There was still enough time in between those two things to have some falling action, when it really should have just been you defeated the boss and that was it. The thing I think you would have wanted to do is probably had the characters in the have the main character in the Thanos cannon ready to fire on Soma, and then you see a really big Wendigo and you use the Thanatos cannon to shoot at him from the cannon, instead of doing it from the ground in the feeding grounds. Or you do both. You have like a giant Colossus Wendigo that's even bigger than the giant boss fight that we did have. That way, it would have been a final boss fight. Then you fire the cannon at Soma. Then you escape. Then you get your end credits, which really should have just all been a cutscene. It would have definitely been helpful to have more fights, obviously, and more bosses much earlier in the game. There's no reason to have the references to the Slender Man 8 Pages game in this, but it didn't really affect anything. But what really did affect things was just the hugely large amount of text and reading that happened in this game for no reason. They were really padding out their time. And if this was a Kickstarter game, unless they promised to give you a 20-hour experience or a 10-hour experience, this should have been a 5-hour experience. This could have been a very, very better edited and sped up experience. And it just isn't. They probably should have left half of the content that they made, even after they had made it, on the cutting room floor. Yeah. Well, I guess I could go on forever, but that's it. That's going to be it for this game. If you did want to get all the achievements, let me say you need a walkthrough. You absolutely would need a walkthrough. I have no idea what for sure is behind that door in the pyramid, nor am I certain that what's behind that door in the pyramid is even the final door. There may just be another door behind that, but I would guess there probably isn't. But I imagine there's nothing in there, unless it's some kind of like secret ending and Virginia and Edwin are actually in the pyramid and they survived, which would be an interesting, like, happy ending for people who played the game all the way through. But there's no real reason to be happy about getting that ending for as much work as it would take. I also feel like they failed. If they weren't capable of making an open world game, they failed to make a circular game. I feel like it would have made sense if the Astro facility did loop back to Indigo Lake, and there was just a way you could run in circles throughout the entire world, and it would take you potentially 20 minutes, and you might even put an achievement around that to say run around the entire world in less than an hour, and that would give you a reason to want to go back and play the game. A lot of players a reason to want to go back and play the game and try and find collectibles. Again, though, they wasted the radar, since it only points to main quests. It never pointed to a side quest, because there were no side quests. It never pointed to a collectible. Never pointed to a source of life or a source of death. There's a lot of things that radar could have done, and it just didn't. But yeah, I think I could probably nitpick this game to death, but it's really not that bad. It's just not good. It's a single A game that is dangerously close to being called a Unity asset flip, but polished enough, and they actually worked on it enough, and since they gave you at least 5 good hours of gameplay here, it definitely does not fall under what a Unity asset flip would be. Most Unity asset flips you wouldn't want to play for even 20 minutes. That's going to be it for this series, though. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. Also, I have a playlist for every game I've ever covered, so go check out BioShock, or Portal 1 and Portal 2. Those are better games. Or my coverage of Mirror's Edge. Those are better runner games. There's at least 4 or 5 games that have done this game's concepts better, and they all existed before Valley came out. Furthermore, if you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, which would be greatly appreciated, there's a link to Patreon, or you could friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist or a gift card. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.